Mark, you recently attended the American Tobacco and Nicotine Forum and the Nicotine Summit in the USA. What struck you most about those two conferences?
Oh, that's a good question. They happen to be back to back. And the one, as you would know, is an industry-sponsored one, and one is supposed to be non-industry and more academic and regulatory focused. So the theme of the first one, the industry-focused one, was looking at regulations, and there was quite a few presentations by FDA people or regulatory people, and then there was presentations by industry people. And I found it was a big love-in. Like, they were so polite to one another. Clearly the industry has all these products that have been blocked. According to what I heard, there's literally millions of applications sitting in FDA that have not been approved and have been in limbo. And they trickle out the odd approval of safer nicotine products. And industry seemed totally okay with it. Like, nobody's standing up and, going, this is crazy. We need to get this moving quicker. So I really picked up, there wasn't just the urgency that I expected, and that people were just so polite to one another. The FDA was complimentary of the industry and how great their applications had become. And the industry was very grateful that the FDA was forward-looking now, and they're trying to change. And like, at the end of nothing's happening. Like, they're still blocking all these products, and industry's not moving ahead. And meanwhile, it's not as though when they don't approve a product that these products don't get out there. It's this massive illegal market that nobody's really even talking about. So in the U.S., safer nicotine is, I think, 80% illegal. Like, it's ridiculous. So they're talking in a way up here in the sky when the world's moving ahead. And from a public health perspective, the society is just being flooded with illegal and in many cases substandard products. So that didn't really come out enough. So then 2 weeks later, I'm back in Washington at the summit, which is supposed to be very academic. And there was academic people up there talking basically that, these products were clearly safer, and that people, it was a really strong off-ramp to smoking cessation, and, things that were definitely in the literature. And then talking about misinformation, but all this is not really known, and they refer to surveys, and doctors still think that nicotine causes cancer, and that there's the NGOs flood the market with false information. And then they had panels with the people that were responsible for the false information, like Smoke Free Kids and Truth Initiative, and the people actually leading these organizations who are the key people spreading total misinformation. Their websites are just laughable, And again, they're so polite to each other. Like, you're trying to protect the kids, we understand, maybe tone back the misinformation a little bit. And the academics were, we really should be promoting these a bit quicker. There's industry people in the room who just sat on their hands because I think they're terrified of each of those groups. They don't want to offend the academics, and they certainly don't want to offend any regulators. So again, everybody's ended up happy and very pleasant to one another, which is fine. I don't mind people being pleasant to one another, but there wasn't really any debate. Like, it was, this is, we're sitting on, the cure for cigarettes. You're blocking all the progress and all the innovation. You're having people, you give people airtime who are just spreading just nonsense. And you all leave the room going, well, see you next year. You did a good job again, and we'll go on with things. So as a person who's feels more urgency that we really should be transitioning to safer products quicker, I found it entirely frustrating, like that you're all just too nice to each other. So that's me in a nutshell.
And coming from a Canadian, actually, right?
Yeah.
We're all way too nice, I think, at some point. But when you say industry, are you speaking about the more traditional tobacco industry people there that have, say for nicotine products, or are you talking about, the independent, nicotine industry, the vaping companies and so forth that?
Yeah, mostly the big tobacco companies. I think they got more stage time. I didn't really differentiate who was who from industry, but yeah, it's the big companies that have a vested interest in this, but also don't seem to feel the urgency because they're still doing fine with their cigarettes. And if the slower the transition for them, the easier it is probably. The way the people have agreed on the approval process, it's really difficult for small companies to compete in that level because you need multi-million-dollar applications. And really the way they've designed it, it's really blocks innovation and really leaves it up to like the lumbering along tobacco companies to do all that. So yeah, I really felt it lacked urgency, and another year will pass and it will be much the same, I think.
So is it a deference, do you think, for the regulators?
What do you mean by that?
Well, they're the ones in control and manage the authorization process. Right. So when they're in the room, they're going to be, patted on the back.
Yeah. I think that's the strategy from industry, that it's much better to be encouraging them and hope you can nudge them forward a little quicker rather than be confrontational. So, because I think then you fear they could shut you out if if you don't like the process, then screw you and stay out of the process. And if you don't like it, then so I think the industry, feels that it's much more productive for them to slowly nudge them along rather than be confrontational.
I think it's a pretty sharp commentary that you're making when Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids is in the room, Truth Initiative is in the room, and they're lauded. Yeah.
Well, I talked to Brian King, who's now the Truth Initiative guy, who used to be with FDA. He presented a graph about kids trying vaping products, and 2018 it was high 20% of kids had tried in the last 30 days. Now it's 7%. And I went up to him after and said, "What's your aim? Like, this is, of course kids are going to try stuff. 7% seems to be a pittance. Like, he wants zero." He said, "Well, yeah, zero." I said, "You're telling me that, teenagers, as long as vaping's out there, you expect zero to have any interest or curiosity in trying this?" "Yeah, we think it's bad for kids. We should not." And so it's obscene. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, what do you expect? Like, kids will try things. I mean, I always push back as if the nicotine or tobacco industry is responsible for changing adolescent risk behavior. I mean, it's not their responsibility, right? I think you put in, guidelines or, regulations that make it difficult for access, like we do with alcohol. You restrict, direct advertising to youth. I'm all for that kind of regulation, but this idea that we're going to just shut it out completely and nobody's ever going to try a vaping product till they're 21 is ridiculous. So it's not up to the industry to solve adolescent risk behavior, and that's basically what the Truth Initiative is after, I think.
Well, yes, the Truth Initiative, made it clear a couple of years ago that they're looking to eradicate all nicotine use, certainly amongst youth and likely amongst adults too as well.
Well, I mean, we've talked about this before. This is, they've changed the goalposts, right? So it's no longer about stopping smoking, it's stopping nicotine. And that transition is has happened, for those of us who are directly involved, it's quite obvious this is a real change of the goalpost. But for the general public and politicians, it seems like a reasonable thing. Cigarettes are bad, they contain nicotine, so vaping must be bad because it contains nicotine, and all this misinformation about youth and nicotine is just all made up stuff, as far as brain damage and depression and all. There's no clinical evidence for any of that, and somehow that's become central to their opposition. So
you wanted to stand up and scream a little bit in those conferences, like, give your head a shake, everybody.
Yeah. I did a bit. So I did grab the mic a couple of times. Because I'm in kind of an interesting situation, a bit unique, because even the academic people who, I respect, and they, present their data, they have to maintain their kind of academic straitjacket, if you were, so they, and I've been a researcher my whole career, so you approach a question and you set up a way to study that, and you come out with your conclusions, and you try not to advocate for your conclusions. You feel you're responsible for putting out that information, and the information may be heavily one-sided, that vaping is much safer than cigarettes, that it's a very effective way for people to transition off cigarettes. But you really are careful about becoming an advocate for that position, and you leave that to somebody else. But in this area, there's really nobody else. So the people that can pick that up are industry, which have no credibility, so they can't really talk about it. So there's a real gap. So there's community voices that are very effective and powerful, but there's not that many, and public health and physicians who should be picking this up are not. They've already decided, for the most part, that they're not going to support safer nicotine. So because I feel differently about it, I don't feel that I have the academic handcuffs anymore, and I feel quite comfortable being an advocate for this and taking that information and talking about it, because I'm not associated with the university anymore, and I don't need to answer or defend that. So there's not that many people in the room like me. So I have a responsibility to grab the mic.
The last time we had you on, Dr. Tyndall, we were talking about your book. Was it Vaping, Smoke and Mirrors?
Behind the Smoke and Fears.
Behind the Smoke and Fears. So how has the last year been with the book? Have you gotten any media coverage from it? Have you any interviews, any interest around the book?
Yeah, I've probably been to 10 or 12 meetings. So so it's opened up a lot of opportunities for me to talk about it. And I always bring my books to my conferences and stuff. There's been some sales through Amazon and things like that, but it's been very useful to as a kind of a thicker business card, basically. So it gives me some credibility. I wrote a book about this. I'm knowledgeable about it, and it's really given me a platform to talk about it. So it's been highly successful in that way.
You mentioned the illicit market. We had somebody on from Euromonitor International on our show and our GFN piece, and this is the data point I want to share with you. Illicit e-vapor is a US dollar $47 billion industry. Globally, the illicit e-vapor market is $47 billion a year, US annual.
Wow. Okay.
And that's 76% of the entire global e-vapor market. 76% is illicit.
Yeah. So that tells you that most of our conversations are totally pointless. We're just talking to regulators and politicians, and like the world's marching on. It's incredible how rapidly it's been taken up. in a world of misinformation and lack of access and lack of products and high tax, I mean, everything that we could think of to be to block the access to vaping products, we to put in place, and still it's flourishing. And from my public health hat, what a disaster! As if we should think that these products should be given over to unregulated criminal gangs. Like it just shows that our current regulations and policies are failing terribly, and there's such a demand. And people, you know, what's so frustrating to me is that people actually deserve access to these safer products. Like they're doing what people should be doing, and the illicit market is. We think of it, you know, we paint it as like a criminal, horrible situation, but basically they're filling a void that regular industry should be filling. And the thing I know so much about prohibition through other drugs, that if there's a demand there, people still want quality products. So they're not people, the 76 people or percent of people are using illicit, it isn't because they're after illicit products. There's something cool about unregulated products. They'd much prefer to have like regulated commercial products, but those products have to be available and competitive with a price. So, and you know what's happened with the illegal cigarette market. You know, in Canada, you know, over half of cigarettes now are not commercial cigarettes, because you reach a tipping point where you can spend $18 for a pack of cigarettes, or you can spend $4. And you don't have to have a criminal mind to decide that you're probably going to spend $4, even if you have a lot of money. You know, so, and because cigarettes are much more common in people without money, like what are we asking people to do? You know, I'd way rather somebody that I deal with in the downtown east side to buy, you know, some milk and eggs and bread and a pack of $4 cigarettes than spend $18 on, you know, a pack of Marlboros from the drugstore. Like, so it's, yeah.
Well, that's always been an issue I've thought, is that, you know, at the height of the kind of social justice and very progressive orientated culture that we live in, and, you know, and taking care of the vulnerable, they don't seem to apply that to somebody who's in low income and a smoker. Yeah. They'll tax that person to death.
Yeah. Well, I in my book, I use an example of a person I bought a carton of cigarettes for, who was on welfare, and just broad numbers. It was they spent about $560 a month on cigarettes, and that's like a pack a day. That's about what it costs you for commercial cigarettes. They get a welfare check from the government for $800. So well over half of their welfare check goes to cigarettes, and well over half of the $560 cigarettes is taxes. So basically their $800 welfare check is being clawed back by the government cigarette taxes. You know, 40% of it is back to the government. So it's outrageous when you think about it like that. So that we're not, we're just punishing the poor, and they'll make decisions that favor cigarettes every day. And those cigarettes will cut into their living expenses. So it's outrageous. So as people, you know, when I was doing clinical work and stuff, I definitely encourage people to go buy a pack of $4 cigarettes than buy $18 cigarettes, you know. So I think, and telling them not to smoke is my duty as a doctor, I guess, but knowing that absolutely nobody was going to stop because I told them they shouldn't smoke cigarettes. So,
somebody with your experience in drugs harm reduction, obviously a pioneer, one of them in that area. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the concept of treating a drug user as somebody with autonomy and treating them with dignity is paramount in the whole philosophy.
Yeah.
And how can somebody who, you know, embodies that in public health turn and not apply that to a smoker? They don't treat somebody who smokes or somebody who's transitioned to safer nicotine products, they don't treat that person with autonomy. They think that they're dupes of big tobacco, and they don't treat them with dignity.
Yeah, no, I think even the pushback I've felt in harm reduction overall is, there's been a lot of pushback, but there's just this touch of empathy in the public's eye of somebody who's using cocaine or heroin or crystal meth on a regular basis that we understand they're probably not going to be able to stop right away, so maybe we should make it a bit safer for them. There's some, there's a little sliver of understanding there. But cigarettes are totally different. So even though we know that it's difficult for people to stop, we still expect them to stop. And so the whole concept of telling somebody that vaping is 95% safer than cigarettes, for the outsider, there's no reason that we should even offer somebody that's 95% safer. They should stop. Then it's 100% safer. And there's no empathy, and there's no room for any autonomy or choice if we choose to use it. And especially for people who really rely on nicotine. So there's these people who really benefit from getting their nicotine, and their life is worse without it. And we don't give people that autonomy. We just tell them, and that's why this idea that now we're going to fight nicotine is just so misplaced. Like some people really need nicotine. Some people really enjoy nicotine, and they should have the opportunity to use it. And from a public health perspective, I'd want them to take it in the way that's as safe as possible. And if they can use nicotine without getting lung cancer and heart disease and COPD, it's pretty crazy that I tell them that it's not good enough. You should stop it altogether. Yeah.
I mean, having a minor nicotine habit really isn't the end of the world.
It's not. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting how even my my take on it and the narrative that I've developed is much kinder towards nicotine than it was 2 or 3 years ago, because I do have a deeper understanding now of nicotine. And in my book, I was especially careful not to come across as a nicotine advocate, but I kind of am. It's fine if people, the definition of addiction should include that it's being harmful. You can't stop even though you realize it's harming you, or you can't stop even though it's harming other people around you and things. And nicotine, for most people, it doesn't fall into that category. It's not really hurting their lives. And as far as the benefits people derive, whether it's just pure pleasure that they feel from it, or actually improving their focus and reducing their anxiety and helping with memory and all these things that nicotine does help people with, I think they should be we should be quite open to allowing them to use it.
Back in the older days of authoritarian governments, when they were more on the left, like in the Soviet Union and so forth, there was a kind of a sense that an individual enjoying pleasure from a cigarette is taking something away from the state, because it's a personal thing that they're enjoying, and it's something that the state is not in control of, and that there's some kind of a tension there that's happening, right? It's can't allow the individuals to experience their own pleasure.
Yeah. No, I think that's really true, that if there's something in society that we're not comfortable with the pleasure of nicotine, and so why would we let people just have nicotine even if it was safe? Because if the only reason they're using it is because it's pleasurable, then why? And the focus of cigarette, even though people use cigarettes, we justify that it's technically their choice. I think we in society, when we see somebody smoking a cigarette, okay, that's your choice. You're going to die, and but you're choosing to kill yourself with these things, and so that justifies them getting a bit of pleasure. So okay, you can get some pleasure, but it's costing you a lot. You're going to die from this, and so sometimes we're okay with that. But just the nicotine itself, just pleasure, and there's no downside for you. I'm not very comfortable with that, letting you do that, And heroin, I deal with heroin all the time. That idea, it really bugs people. The idea of people getting on methadone. Sorry, I'm jumping over.
No, that's all right.
So that the harm reduction, similarity in the opioid world is methadone. So we'll give you something that's not heroin, and we can control it. It will control your cravings and help you get through the day, but it doesn't give you any pleasure, and we're pretty happy with that. And when I did a safe supply program giving people Dilaudid or another opiate that not only stopped them from using fentanyl or heroin, but gave them some pleasure, there was some disconnect there with people. Like, what do you mean you're giving them Dilaudid? I know they won't overdose on it, but doesn't it still give them pleasure? And yeah, no, that's why they like it better than methadone, because it gives them some pleasure. So, but we're not that happy with that idea that people should get anything, especially for free, that doesn't, if you're getting pleasure, there should be some downside, because you might just keep using it, because what's to stop you from continuing to use it?
So there's something there then. I've thought for many years that a lot of the pushback, or at least some of the pushback, because there are so many former smokers that quit cold turkey before vaping ever came around, and they're holding a grudge.
Yeah. No, I think there's really something to that. In my world of other drugs, there's nobody worse or down about harm reduction than somebody who's quit heroin. Like, they think people should, I did it, why should you get other things? You should just quit like I did. And people are quite incredulous about harm reduction. And ex-smokers are like that too. Like, what do you mean people should vape or get nicotine? I quit, and they should just be able to quit too. So it is fascinating when you're trying to develop some public understanding about this. Not only are non-smokers against the idea of harm reduction, but often ex-smokers are not supportive of this either. They, like you just said, they feel, I quit, then you should quit. And why should you continue to get some pleasure out of using nicotine without any cost?
Right. Well, and somebody who's quit smoking, put on 15 pounds and had some miserable life.
Exactly. No, I think that's very, very, very true, that people feel they've really gone through some hellish experiences and some downsides when they've quit, and they did it.